All right, today we're going to talk about the $68 garden tower. And we're coming up on the 1 year anniversary of when I built it. So, as I get ready to break it down for spring and start over, I thought this would be a great time to talk about how it went, what went right, and what went wrong. Now, to start off with, if you haven't seen the video on how to construct it, I'll link it up above. You can go check it out. It shows you how to build one of your own and breaks down the cost and everything. Now, the cost is going to depend on, where you can get your materials. Like this pump, I bought mine for $20 and I just saw it was on Amazon for 15. So just keep your eye out. There's different things. The pop-up sprinkler head, I didn't want to use that one, but that's all I could find at the time. So they have just, little cheap pop-up sprinkler heads that you can screw on. Just use those. And the buckets, everyone gets excited about the buckets, right? You can use food grade if you want food grade, or somebody else said you could go buy Firehouse subs and buy the bucket with the lid for like $2 or $3, I think. The lid on mine costs more than $3. So if you can go to Firehouse subs and get them, I think they said that it goes towards a good cause too. I think about 10 years ago, I've actually got some of the buckets from Larry Sub. So look for any place that's like a deli. They use them for pickles and mayonnaise and frosting and whatever. So you can check around. And if you get those for free, like from some deli, some of you have scored them for free. That really cuts down on the cost. And all you got to get is a pump and some plumbing fittings and you're set. Now, one thing we're going to talk about is the pool noodles, because that's a major component in this, and that's what kept the cost down. And I just want everyone to just remember that this was an experiment, that we were just trying to build something vertical growing. We're trying to get some kind of vertical garden going on, and looking at different things that people have done, just like we've done with our downspouts and that, and bringing all that information together and kind of finding some way to do it cheap and easy. Now, if you can go out and spend more money, if you want to go buy a garden tower and spend $700, $800, $1,000, whatever, that's great. Go do that. They work well. But if you can't afford it, we're trying to do something that everyone can afford. And I've seen some other people do other things. And for one, some of those took a lot of time to do, or they took a lot of money. There was a lot of different like fixtures you had to get. And some of those fixtures the price is going up. So we try to use the pool noodle because each one, like I said, you can get a pool noodle. They used to be $1. Some of you paying $2, $3, $4, depending on where you get it. But the dollar store, now it's $1.25, still relatively cheap. Now, we grew a load of kale. And the reason being is that I know how to grow kale, and we eat a lot of kale. You're going to see a little bit of basil peppered in here, but that was just from a plant we got for dinner. We ate some, and then I rinsed off some of the other plants, stuck them in there. But basically, this is most of the stuff we grew was kale, curly, dino kale, and we grew a tomato plant too, which we're going to talk about that in a minute. But basically, I want to grow the same plant, because if you do something and you do it well, that could be a fluke. If you do it twice, it could be a coincidence. So when you're experimenting and trying different things out, you have to do it over and over and over again and get the same results to know that it really works, right? So if I do, I grew basil one time and then kale and then lettuce and then chard or whatever, I wouldn't really have any concept of it when something went wrong, what I was doing wrong. So if I know how to grow kale, I know it's doing right, then I can pay attention to other problems. Just like you see the mulch at the bottom was wet. Some people said it's going to drip. And it did leak. So we had to keep an eye on the pool noodles, and they kept the cost down. So I still wanted to use them. So I figured we're doing it outside. Some of you have built these and that. You've done it inside. Let me know how that's going. But all I had to do was keep an eye on the pool noodles. I wanted to use the hockey pucks. We also said you could cut them longer, angle them up, because if you put your plants in and they droop down and the water dripped on the stem, the roots in the stem inside the bucket, and drip down your plant and drip out, right? But if you kept your plants up like this, when the water hit the stem, it dripped back down into the bucket. So if you can keep your plants up, you could do that with a pool noodle, cut it bigger and just angle it up. Or you could tie up your plants like the kale with twine. You could wrap it around. All kinds of stuff you can do. Now you could always use the plumbing fixtures, the 45s and that, and cut holes and glue those in, but those price on those are going way up. So that really added to the cost. It almost like doubled the cost of it. If you wanted to use that and want to spend the time of doing that, that's fine. That will work. But just using the pool noodles, we just kind of had to keep an eye on it. Cutting the bigger pieces, angling them up, those worked. But I still wanted to mess around with the hockey puck. So over the year, I used a lot of them. And what I would do is when the plants, if it started leaking a little, I would angle it back a little bit at the bottom so that it would aim back towards the bucket. And then that way, if it started dripping on it, it would drip, hit the bucket and then drip down the side, and it would go inside the lip of the next one and then fall down inside the reservoir. So that worked. All I had to do is keep an eye if I saw the mulch was getting wet, looked around for whatever plant it was dripping from, and messed around with the pool noodle a little bit. Now, someone else asked, how do you know when to refill it? And these buckets, I can see the water line. You can see it right here. They're a lot thinner than when we used to paint years ago. I don't think they used to be this thin, but I can see. And if you can't see yours, you can probably just hold a flashlight up and you can tell what the level is. But I don't get into the bottom. I'm not taking this apart. If I needed to, I could actually pop the top off and get into there if maybe the pump got plugged up or something. But I never took this one apart. So when we get done with the scale, we're going to break it down. This is going to be the first time that I've seen inside of it too. So I broke this down, and what we did was I just took the plants out, tossed the plants in the compost, and let this sit here for the day. I had something else to do. So I haven't washed this or anything. It's just been sitting here for a day, kind of drying out, and I haven't even been into the reservoir. You can see it's not that dirty. It's not going to take a whole lot to clean up. There's not a whole lot of algae. There's a little bit on the pool noodles, but there's not a whole lot of mess on the inside of it. There was a little bit of sediment, and on the bottom, some of the salts or whatever from the nutrients kind of collected on there. I expected that because that also happens inside of our downspouts and our other off-grid containers and everything. So if you want to sit there and scrub or use a little vinegar, you can get that off. But other than that, it didn't look too bad. So the tube got a little bit of algae in it, so I'm going to take that off and bleach it, get it all cleaned up. Somebody out there suggested that I use a black irrigation tube. That would take care of that, so that would be a cool idea. Somebody else just said they used rigid PVC and just put it down in there. Then you don't have to worry about supporting the riser at the top, that it just sat on top of that and worked fine. So I might try that next. There's the reservoir. I haven't been in here yet, and it looks nice and clear. It doesn't smell, and it looks fine. There's some sediment on the bottom. I think there maybe was some algae growth. It went through its little life cycle, got, recirculated and ended up as sediment on the bottom. Other than that, the pump didn't get clogged up. There's a tiny bit of roots, but nothing like, it could have been. So all in all, this doesn't look like it's going to take very much. I just emptied it out, wiped it down, filled it back up, put it back together. And here's just the small sprinkler head. Like I said, instead of the pop-up one, they're only a couple of bucks. This one was brass. They have plastic ones too. And it's really easy. If it ever gets clogged up, you can just unscrew it, rinse it out in the faucet, screw it back on. Nice and simple and cheap. So since we grew kale good, I had a tomato plant left over. We had some in our other off-grid containers. So I took one tomato plant and I decided to put it in here. Now, I'm only going to use one because my reservoir at the bottom is only 5 gallons, and I use a 5-gallon bucket with a net cup on the top to grow tomato plants. And I know that once they get kind of tall and start producing fruit, they use water really fast. So if I stuck a bunch of tomato plants in here, I would be constantly out here filling it up, and I don't want to do that. So I want to build something that's basically cheap, easy, put it together, doesn't take a whole lot of work. So I'm just going to grow one tomato plant. So we put the tomato plant in. Here's the bigger pool noodle. Like I was saying, we put it in an angle. It holds the plant up. And this plant actually got big. It actually grew and touched the overhang, I think is 7.5 feet up. So it grew up to about 7.5 feet, started having some tomatoes, and then a storm came through. And that part of the house, I made a mistake where I put it there so that I could tie it off and I could screw it to the house if I needed to with one of the handles. But I forgot there's no overhangs. There's no gutter on overhang. And when it rained, we got a torrential rainstorm. You know, we've had several storms last year, and it came down there like a waterfall. And I didn't even think about it. And it just crushed the plant, broke all the limbs off of it, just knocked everything off, and we'll have to try again. So this one did grow. It grew up, and before I get out there to film it, it got tore up. So I had some kale and just decided to put kale back in there. And I didn't have a whole lot of transplants, so I just left it with the 2 buckets because I thought that would be pretty cool. Let's try something different. Instead of doing the, you know, growing another tower full of kale like we had before, let's just go ahead and grow one that's small. This would fit on someone's porch, nice and easy if you didn't want to get 4 buckets, if you only wanted to buy 2. And the pump didn't have to lift up 6 feet. It could only lift up 2 or 4 feet. You know, it could be a cheaper pump, that it would be a great option. So we grew that, but that looks pretty cool. You can imagine that sitting on someone's balcony, or if you have several of those sitting around your yard with a bunch of kale, or pak choi would do good in here, mint, basil, your lettuces. We're going to try all different things. Like I said, this was the year of kale, and you guys have seen me go like years growing pak choi in that. We grew a load of kale in here, and I think that this works well whatever configuration you got. I like this because we could take it apart. We could use just 1 bucket on top like this. You could just put 2, or you could put 3. With just the 2 like this, it was a lot more sturdy. We didn't have to worry about it tipping over. When you had it stacked up 4 and the plants grew kind of big, even with 5 gallons in the bucket, because of the leverage, if the wind blew, it was still moving around a little bit. But when it's small like this, this is a good option. You don't have to worry about it. This is more, like we said, set it, forget it. It worked well, grew a load of kale, and we just come out here and keep harvesting off of here and picking kale and just letting it grow. When, you know, go around once in a while, you're going to have leaves that die in that. Just cut those off or pull them off. But this was one of the easiest ways that I grew a lot of kale. And this actually grew better than the downspouts with a little circulation and the water moving around in it. So after that harvest, we had some more transplants, put the tower garden back together, all 4 of them, put more kale in it, and went to town again. So all in all, was it worth it? I'd say yes. $68, and I grew way more than that in food, and I'll still be able to use it for years to come. Now mine's outside, and I would just use them outside because with the pool noodles, they do tend to drip, and you know, a couple of drops isn't going to bother anything. You can finagle them around and fix it. But inside, you know, if you're not paying attention and it's dripping, it'll drip all over the floor. It might make a big mess. Some of you out there, I've seen you built them, and I've seen them, you're growing inside, especially like people are up north, right? Let me know how that's going. And a lot of you have used the pool noodles, you know, at an angle. Let me know how it's going inside the group or down below. One of you out there, forgive me, I forgot what your name is. I've been looking for your channel, but YouTube, you know, doesn't show it to me. I saw one of your videos and you commented, we talked a little bit, but they set up about 2 dozen of these. And they also set up downspouts like an NFT system where it pumped the water to the top and drained down to a reservoir and went back around. That looked cool, but they have about 2 dozen of those going. Let me know how it's working. And if anything, let us know down in the comment, you know, your channel name so people can go check you out. You've got a lot more experience. I've had the 1 tower. I keep pointing over there because I got an orange bucket and I keep thinking that's a tower. I've used just 1 tower over the year, and you've got like 2 dozen of them. So you probably know 10 times more than what I do. So if you can help out, let people know. All of you who have tried this too, if you have problems with it, let us know. We can work through it. We're going to make modifications. We're going to try it again. We might try something totally different. And if anybody does any 3D printing, if you could think of some kind of fitting to put on there that would fit the curvature of the bucket, that would hold a net cup where people could just drill a hole and it would fit on there, better than like the PVC elbows. They're straight, right? And when you go to fit them on the curved bucket, sometimes you have to heat the bucket or, you know, to get it right, or use a lot of silicone or something. If you can make a 3D sleeve that kind of fit the curvature of the bucket that would slide in, you could have a hole, 2-inch hole, and your net cup could fit in it. That would work really well. I don't know if I'm explaining myself right. I kind of have it in my mind. And if I had a 3D printer, I could do it. But if you could do that, you could probably sell a bunch of those, or, you know, hand out the code, pass it out to people who have 3D printers. I've seen a lot of cool projects. So all kinds of stuff we can still do. this excites me, and I've got other stuff coming up. So you guys stick around, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss anything, and keep sharing it up with everyone. Live to inspire, keep on growing, be the change. We'll catch you next time.